We are the anchors of Queer News Tonight, and this evening we discuss the queer headlines. Pete Buttigieg was honored at the DNC today with LGBTQ+ Hall of Fame induction.
Melania Trump charges a $237,500 fee to LGBTQ+ Republican group Log Cabin Republicans for a speech at her own residence, Mar-a-Lago.
Our fund foundation raises $151,500 to support LGBTQ+ nonprofits in South Florida after DeSantis cuts arts and cultural grants.
GLAAD study shows 80% of Americans support LGBTQ+ equality, down from 84%.
Valentina Petrillo becomes the first openly transgender athlete to compete in the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games amidst ongoing debate over transgender inclusion.
Good evening. Welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening television news, broadcasting live and available on demand on your favorite streaming channels. We are proud to announce that YouTube has recognized Queer News Tonight, certified by analytics company vidIQ, that we now have more than 9.5 million views. More than 500,000 of you have watched this show in the last 60 days. Thank you. It is Tuesday, August 20th, 2024. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ+ news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same model of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ+ community. Our mission is to support the 11 pillars of our LGBTQ+ community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of lesbian, trans, Latino, Black, healthcare, seniors, students, faith, social justice, business, and queer culture. Help us support our community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ nonprofit media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network. In 2024, our magazine is celebrating 40 years of the LGBTQ experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ and broader community.
Let's meet tonight's anchors at Queer News Tonight. Let's welcome Yvonne Rohrbacher. Yvonne is a 35-year activist in South Florida and was the publisher of our first gay Yellow Pages in the 1990s. She started with a broadcast on the 2000 show on Party 93.1 Radio with Mark Gilbert, Issues Over the Rainbow. Currently, her involvement includes the Women's Fund at Stonewall Museum and Library, the Lesbian Thespians Fundraising and Performance, and now Queer News Tonight. Welcome, Yvonne.
Hi.
Hi, we're so happy to have you.
Speaking of that, guess where I was this morning, speaking of largest?
Where?
At the largest weekly social gathering of LGBTQ people, mostly gay men, in the country. Can you guess what it was?
I could guess, but you could also just tell us.
Well, it wasn't a circuit party.
Yeah,
it's
I was going to say in the morning.
It's actually the weekly coffee and conversation event that they have at the Pride Center. And I had no idea that it was that big. They get more than 200 people in that room on some weeks.
I had no, and so it's weekly every
Yes.
Tuesday then?
Every Tuesday morning.
Oh,
Yep.
Could have to check it out. Maybe I'll meet you there next week.
And I think I have some new viewers from my conversations.
Hopefully they're watching right now. Let's welcome Michael Greene. He serves as the chairman of the Broward County Ending the HIV Epidemic Advisory Board. He is on the board of directors for the AIDS Institute. He is the community linkage and liaison coordinator for Holy Cross Health. His passions include advocacy on the local and state levels, as well as movies, music, and travel. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, welcome, Eric. Very nice to be here with you and Yvonne and Alex. And I just got in from D.C. Was at the AIDS Institute board meeting. So it was really nice. There was a live protest that happened during our meeting, so I got to record a little bit of it. And fortunately, nobody was harmed, and I made it back here safely.
Well, we are happy to have you to dive right into these headlines today. Let's welcome Alex Morash. Alex has written for The Advocate and served as editor-in-chief of Options magazine. He has also served as media director of the National LGBTQ Task Force and press secretary for the Florida Democratic Party. Welcome back, Alex.
Thank you, and I'm so happy to be here. I've got my blue on because it's the Democratic National Convention week.
You and Michael are matching.
So.
Yes, and we're kind of matching too, Yvonne.
Kind of.
Yes, exactly.
And I just want to say hi to all of my friends at the DNC right now, whether they're there as a delegate or the protester. I hope you're all having a fun time. And, of course, this is tonight's lead anchor, Eric Restivo. Eric is well known for DJing at some of the largest clubs in West Hollywood and has had residencies in L.A., P-Town, New York City, and now Wilton Manors. He is the television host of The W Boys, focusing on LGBTQ love for entertainment and is broadcast on Fridays and then on demand. Welcome, Eric. Any good news for us to hear?
Listen, we're at the round table, and we are a LGBTQ plus platform that gets to report here weekly, so it's always good news. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the Queer News for Tuesday, August 20th, 2024. First, this evening, let's queer up politics. Pete Buttigieg inducted into the LGBTQ Political Hall of Fame. We're all clapping here at the table. U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg received one of the highest honors in LGBTQ plus political advocacy during the Democratic National Convention, in Chicago. Buttigieg was inducted into the LGBTQ plus Political Hall of Fame at the LGBTQ plus Victory Institute's Victory at the DNC event. He also addressed the attendees during the event. This accolade recognizes Buttigieg's groundbreaking career in public service, which has significantly advanced queer visibility in American politics. The event highlighted LGBTQ plus representation at all levels of government and showcased a historic 17% LGBTQ plus representation among DNC delegates, up from 11.5% in 2020. Attendees included notable queer figures such as allies like Zachary Quinto, comedian Dana Goldberg, and actor Wilson Cruz. Buttigieg's husband, Chasten, said, "I am so proud to be his husband and to be by his side as he serves our country." The event was attended by governors, members of Congress, state legislators, and other officials from across the nation. With this honor, Buttigieg joins a distinguished list of past inductees, including U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin, Harvey Milk, Leo Varadkar, and Tamara Adrian. Former President Barack Obama headlined today's events under the theme A Bold Vision for America's Future. He was joined by Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff, who addressed the convention, while Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker opened the evening with a welcome speech. The Democratic National Convention began Monday in Chicago, marking the party's first in-person convention in 8 years. There's so many things to take away from this story. I always love celebrating small victories here. This feels like a very big one for us, but 8 years just feels so long for an in-person DNC. I think because this last year, specifically maybe like the last 8 to 9 months, there's been a lot of chaos going on. So it's felt even longer and just kind of stretched this amount of time out. But this is a win in my book. How do we feel?
From 11 to 17%
Yes.
on the floor at the
Right.
convention is
Yes.
awesome. Awesome.
Like,
Even in 8 years, I'll bet you anything, that 11% didn't all stand up and be counted. Maybe there were 17% there, and this year they're all out.
Yeah.
I just think that that's something we should continue to celebrate, that we are all openly part of society now.
exactly. One of the nice things with the Democratic National Convention delegate selection process is they actually do have certain criteria to ensure that more people are represented. They have a gender quota of it's supposed to be about 50-50. People identified as men and women have LGBTQ representation, people of color representation. So I've always liked to see that going on. The conventions are gigantic to put together. Like, even as someone who's just working for a state party, the media requests before the pandemic hit for 2020, I was getting media requests for the Wisconsin convention for the months ahead of time. So it's always a big to do. This convention, I think they're off to a great start. You know, President Biden really opened it up amazingly with his speech. He recognized the protesters. He talked about wanting to end the war. He wanted to show off how amazing Kamala is. A lot of people are saying the Democrats are really listening to all of their different bases, whether it be people who are supported more moderate to the left. They're trying to get everyone involved because they want to win finally. Didn't look like they wanted to win for the last 6 months, and now they want to win. And as for Pete Buttigieg, I think it was a good choice to make him an inductee right now. People tend to find me like, oh, you tend to criticize politicians, see what's their weakness. I tend to not have anything on Pete Buttigieg. I'm sorry, everybody. Like he seems to be a very competent leader. I wish more elected officials would take a few notes from how he does this sort of work. And, I hope that he gets in the cabinet. Right?
Might run out of material.
Well, I do agree with you on Pete Buttigieg being competent, and the fact of I like the way that he carries himself and how he represents himself, his family. And to the convention, it does seem to feel more warm, more inclusive, more open. And I am very glad that, President Biden received the love that he so deserves for not only being the president, but for his 50 plus years of service. So I was really grateful to just witness what I was able to see last night.
Yeah, and I think unlike the Republican convention, I don't think you're going to have any crazy ladies with tattoos on their face trying to talk about like all sorts of craziness or trying to push any nonsense like the Republican convention, or like I remember the 2016 convention for the Republicans. That was another one where I think they had only like super D-list celebrities, whereas this year I've not been privy to who the special guests are, but there's a lot of rumors around
Ted Nugent. Oh, kidding.
But Taylor Swift and Beyonce have been the rumors around them.
Oh, yeah.
Those are big rumors.
I was talking about the Republicans. Yes, You're right. Like the best they could do was Ted Nugent.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
Most people we're talking to today probably don't even know who that is.
I know who he is. Next, let's queer up politics again. Log cabin Republicans paid Melania Trump $237,000 to speak in her own home. How much does it cost to get the GOP to say they support log cabin Republicans? Well, now we know. Melania Trump's speaking fee has made headlines after recent financial disclosures revealed a hefty sum from the log cabin Republicans, an LGBTQ plus conservative group. The Palm Beach chapter for the organization paid $237,500 for her speech at an April 20th event held at Trump's residence Mar-a-Lago. The latest records from the Federal Election Commission reveal that while most of Melania Trump's income stems from licensing deals and NFT sales, this significant sum from a speaking engagement stands out. Though Melania Trump has been notably absent from her husband's 2024 presidential campaign activities, she hosted another log cabin event at her New York penthouse in July. The April event, alongside the July fundraiser, was publicized as supporting the log cabin Republicans rather than directly benefiting Trump's campaign. Despite the high speaking fees, the log cabin Republicans reported successful fundraising outcomes, raising $1 million in April and $1.4 million in July. However, Melania Trump fees raised many questions about the lengths to which Republican gays are willing to go for acceptance within the within the GOP party.
They often need inclusion in the LGBT.
Yes, I've got so used to say.
It didn't not make sense.
Right, exactly.
I just have to say before we talk serious about this, all I can think about, and I'm probably, already driving the bus down there for this, but I just think of like all the SNL skits of Melania Trump, like when they would like do her speeches, and it's just, that's what I'm picturing right now. Like just her in her home speaking, not great, to these Republican gays and just banking, just making bank. And it's laughable and scary at the same time. It really is.
Well, minus the gap, the only thing that I wanted to say about this story was at least now it has become fair, because the Democrats have been picked on Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama for their speaking fees and how much money they raise and their books raise. So now we get to see it on the other side. It's Melania Trump. It's the log cabin Republicans, LGBT portion of their party. So welcome,
I think it's fair to ask questions about the amount of money an LGBTQ group spends on a speaker, regardless of if they're the log cabins or another group. But I think the other big questions on this are, one, the point of, where has Melania Trump been this election cycle? Why is she not standing next to her convicted of 34 felonies
She's tired.
husband?
She's tired.
Right? Like, that's a big question. But also, like, I understand, like, I love to give the Democrats a hard time for taking big speaking fees, but this was a fundraiser for an advocacy group. Like, my own org has done fundraisers with Hillary Clinton. Secretary Clinton didn't charge us a dime to do that sort of work, And this is a little different where she's not speaking to like a corporate board or something like that where you would expect a payment perhaps. So there's a lot of questions on why is she doing this? She's also doing it not just as someone, like Hillary Clinton wasn't running when she took those speech fees. I'm not saying she should have taken that money. I was like, would have made the campaign easier. But like, she wasn't running at the time. Her husband is currently running for office and she's taking payment fees. That's a little different than what the Democrats dealt with.
What's a little perplexing is that it's been made clear that she wasn't doing it to help her husband.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly did she talk about, and what exactly was the purpose if it wasn't about that? And as Eric is saying, I'm picturing all of the.
I don't know what she would. I mean, how to make the White House look awful on Christmas? I don't know.
Maybe she was trying to discuss like getting a rescue operation. Blink 3 times, Melania. Come on.
Yeah.
Yvonne.
Take it away.
Okay, I'll try. Next, let's queer up South Florida and Florida. The Our Fund Foundation, I love them, achieves a $150,000 fundraising goal to replace DeSantis' cuts for LGBTQ plus arts. In July, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis drastically cut state grants for arts and cultural programs and eliminated all LGBTQ plus arts funding. It severely impacted LGBTQ serving nonprofits in South Florida. And in response, the Our Fund Foundation swiftly launched an emergency arts and culture fund to bridge the financial gap and support these crucial organizations. David Jobin, president and CEO of the Our Fund Foundation, but he is an angel, praised the quick mobilization of LGBTQ plus and allied philanthropists. Through their efforts, the Our Fund Foundation raised $151,500 to supplement the losses. Organizations supported by this fund included the Gay Men's Chorus of South Florida, the Stonewall National Museum Archives and Library, Island City Stage, Thinking Cap Theater, Plays of Wilton, South Florida Pride Concert Band, and Arts United. Mark Kent of the Gay Men's Chorus of South Florida and Nicole Stoddard of Thinking Cap Theater have commended the Our Fund Foundation's support, emphasizing their role as a leader in challenging times. The Arts and Culture Fund initiative was supported by leadership-level gifts from notable funds and individuals, including the Shearsam Fund and the Russell Vance and Edward Schwartz Charitable Trust. Jobin announced that the funds would soon be distributed to the affected agencies. Additionally, the Our Fund Foundation will award $300,000 in grants during its annual Arts and Culture Fund grant ceremony in September 2024. It's coming right up. DeSantis should know by now that the LGBTQ plus community in Florida is invincible, and together it is set to thrive. I agree. He thinks that he's being tough on us. He may not really understand the history of what we've had to survive through and thrive and grow and become 17% of the DNC's convention population. I think he just doesn't know if he thought he was going to stop us that easily.
I also think this is a very positive story in some ways. I always hear from people outside of Florida. They always give us such crap that we don't support queer people because of really one man who, let's be honest, first got into office over a rounding error. It was so close. So, I always get... It's literally, that's what Andrew Gillum called it. I can't take credit for it.
Right, sure.
But, the fact that our community is coming together to still fund queer services, to still fund queer arts at a time when you see the government pulling back on that, I think that says a lot more about Florida, and people need to give Florida a little bit more credit.
Yeah.
I just think DeSantis knows he's on his way out, and he's just kind of trying to wreak as much havoc as he can on the way. You know, that's long story short. I mean, I've hated him since I moved here. I didn't understand him, but I understood the anger surrounding him, and I haven't been here a full 2 years, but I get it. You know, it was easy. So for me, it just feels like a going out kicking and screaming kind of, you know, move to me.
Childlike.
Yes. Making the children I babysat for look like prizes. Yes.
Yeah. You know, in a relatively short amount of years, considering the way the world usually works, the Our Fund Foundation has become the bedrock, especially of South Florida, LGBTQ plus needs in many different ways. But the arts and culture, when you think about people like the Lesbian Thespians that I'm a part of, or the Stonewall National Museum, what we used to have to do to even have a $50,000 a year budget,
right,
compared to what the Our Fund Foundation, partly just because bringing it to light what organizations needed money and having people go to them and say, well, here, help me give this money. They have become just the way that so many organizations have reached the next level and the next level.
And, you know, when you do all of these hateful things or these policy hateful things, let me just say that, you're hurting not only what you feel like is gay, lesbian, but you're hurting your own children, your own grandchildren. And so, you know, I believe I said on the show last week in a story, it's like we're all human, you know, regardless of what color, you know, we bleed the same. We're all human. So it's like, stop the foolishness. And I appreciate organizations like Our Fund that have the availability and the willingness to actually step in and to support. So that is a wonderful thing. And congratulations to Our Fund for being able to do that. And hopefully they will be able to do more. And hopefully when our next election cycle, we won't have to worry about certain things.
We won't have to think about that
Beautifully
craziness.
said, Michael. I don't think I can top that one. I mean, I can't top much, but I can't top that either. Unfortunately, this next article is not great news either. Next, let's queer up the USA View. GLAAD study shows LGBTQ plus support dips amid rising negative rhetoric. According to GLAAD's latest Accelerating Acceptance study, support for LGBTQ plus equality remains strong in the U.S., but the report also shows that negative conservative speech is having a noticeable impact. The study shows that 80% of Americans still support equal rights for LGBTQ plus people, but this is a decline from 84% last year. Looking at the study, GLAAD president and CEO Sarah Kate Ellis said, quote, "This should not come as a surprise," end quote. She attributed the decline to extremist politicians and media outlets that have targeted queer communities with harmful legislation and disinformation campaigns. Despite the negative trends, the study highlights some positive findings. It shows that 95% of non-LGBTQ plus respondents believe schools should be safe for all youth, and 91% agree that queer people should live without fear. So, I'm not sure what the schools, yes, schools should absolutely be safe. I don't need to be gay to know that. I want to focus more on the decline and what has changed in the tone or the pointedness of the hateful speech that has been around forever, and as opposed to now. Why is it so kicked up now? What is happening right now that this show, like Queer News Tonight, is so incredibly important because it's a platform that we're sharing all of these articles, but why now is everything so kicked up? Anyone?
Well, look who's running for president, and I can say it, you know, when we had Charlottesville, it was just so shocking to me, and I believe President Biden even spoke to it last night in his speech of, you know, you're watching people marching down the street, spewing hate, you know, towards Nazis, hates towards blacks, hates toward, you know, every group that was not their own, and there was no shame in it. You know, whereas before they hid under hoods and everything else, now they were just out, you know. So I think that there was a wave that was released, in the United States, and not only the United States, you look at other countries who do not have the freedoms that they have. And I read articles all the time of, people in some places are literally just being killed for being insinuated that they're homosexual, or how they might identify. So it is important to have shows like this. Representation matters.
Absolutely.
So you feel that the hateful people have been emboldened and have been able to say more because they knew Trump was running again?
Yes.
They might have quieted down for a little bit and then they came back?
I don't know if they ever quieted down.
Well, what's one event that we think at this table that was largely volumized on media outlets and got a lot of coverage that we feel we saw the tides turning a little bit more crazier? Does anyone have one? When Trump's people rallied and beat down police officers and beat down security to try and get to his rally, and just like when they were stomping over people, I don't remember what.
January 6th. It was a riot and an attempted coup.
To me, that is when everything started shifting just a little bit crazier. Like they turned the volume up on the gas on the Trump poison a little bit more for me.
I feel you. My only concern even discussing the report is the New York Times on August 1st reported President Ellis of GLAAD of all sorts of spending improprieties at the organization.
I read about that, yes.
Her salary was a little high, between $700,000 and $1.3 million. That wasn't the thing that worried me. It was the $25,000 allowance for renting a place in P-Town every summer, $20,000 to redo her home office, and a whole host of other issues where the New York Times alleged that the former chief financial officer tried to warn the board to reel it in. The board has continued to defend her. So instead of commenting on this, I'm going to say that I think the president of GLAAD should resign. And I think most of its board members probably aren't going to last.
Maybe already had.
No, she's digging in, and that's what makes it so hard for me. I want to talk about this survey, but she's tainting their own research as long as she's still there.
Yeah, I was shocked at her salary, anyways. I mean, I'm over 25, so when I was young. In my day, we had to walk in the snow 5 blocks to get to the Gay and Lesbian Community Center. And then when we got there, the executive director made $30,000 a year. So that it was shocking to me. And I was surprised that they wouldn't think there'd be any oversight.
Unfortunately, I think it's an issue with the way certain LGBTQ groups, sadly now, are maybe getting a little too into their own hype and success with the money.
And that's showing the decline in the numbers that we're seeing with this survey.
Interesting transition. I like that.
Well,
that is interesting because maybe there's an arrogance that has, or what they see as a lack of humility. Go back, go back where you came from, kind of a thing. The more power we get, or the more visibility we get, the more that might happen. You've got a point there.
And sometimes we have people that are in the community. And there's a quote I heard today, and I wanted to remember it so bad. But people sometimes are not about the community, they're about themselves. So if you have someone who says, I'm community, but everything goes back to themselves, well, community sees that. Community's not dumb. And it's like, if that's really what it's about, do I really want to be a part? So, as much as I might hate to say this, sometimes we have to look at ourselves too. What are we standing for? What are we representing? What are we really showing to someone that wants to make someone, an ally, a supporter, or are we really repulsing?
Well, I hope at this time next year we are up on those numbers.
And speaking of some good news, next, let's queer up trans rights. The first out transgender Paralympian is set to compete in Paris. Valentino Petrillo, a visually impaired sprinter from Italy, is set to make history as the first openly transgender athlete to compete in Paralympic Games. At 50 years old, Petrillo will represent Italy in the women's T12 200-meter and 400-meter events at the Paris 2024 Paralympics. Petrillo's selection is a landmark moment for transgender inclusion in elite para sports. Petrillo transitioned in 2019. Describing her participation as an important symbol of inclusion, Petrillo has continued to excel in her sport, winning bronze medals in both the 200-meter and the 400-meter events at the 2023 World Para Athletes Championships in Paris. However, all is not well in paradise. The inclusion of transgender athletes in women's sports is still a matter of intense debate. In March 2023, World Athletics and the governing body for track and field introduced a ban on transgender women who have undergone male puberty from competing in elite female events at the international level. Opponents of transgender inclusion argue that those who have experienced male puberty may retain advantages even after transitioning, while supporters view such exclusions as discriminatory. Transgender athlete policies differ across sports. While World Athletics has imposed a ban, the International Paralympic Committee allows each sport to set its own guidelines. World Para-Athletes currently permits individuals legally recognized as women to compete in women's events. The Paris Paralympic Games will take place from the 28th of August to the 8th of September of 2024. You know, I'm always disturbed about this transgender discrimination in sports, because I always remind people, whenever we talk about, the reason why the right wing always wants to push these discussions is to not talk about trans murders. And to see, so much happened at the Olympics recently, and I know we'll get into more detail of that later, of the discrimination and the accusations of women being allegedly trans and being men. It's nice to see trans athletes get to perform and shine, because there's really no reason, some of the things they're trying to talk about, I always just look at it and I'm like, what are you talking about? If it's wrestling or boxing, whatever, you're going to make sure people are similar heights and weights. Like, gender really doesn't matter. Sex, it's so much fluff and trying to just, people are not even noticing the importance that's going on in our community.
No, there are people now that are stuck on these trans witch hunts.
Mm-hmm. I would like just to note the fact of at 50 years of age that you are a Paralympian. Okay, that is a huge accomplishment.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's what we really should be highlighting. The only really thing I wanted to add with that is, people are angered by the inconsistency in the rules versus trans athletes. It's case by case. Yeah. That's how every Olympic sport is. It doesn't matter who the human competing in it is. Mm-hmm. It's not the same set of rules for baseball as it's not the same set of rules for wrestling. But did you see the breakdancing? I'm just saying that, when you're sitting at home and you're angered by things that are out of your control, that also don't have anything to do with you. Just take a step back and realize that it's case by case, because we're human beings. Really.
The other thing I'll say is just, even the 200-meter dash just sounds exhausting to me. Good for her to point out at 50.
I know.
Next, you are all, including us at the table, invited to the LGBTQ plus Savannah, St. Patrick's Day, and Golden Isles of Georgia trip. Ooh. Get ready to embark on a springtime adventure like no other with the Hotspots Happening Out Travel Club. Picture yourself on this journey, strolling through this enchanting Golden Isles of Georgia, where centuries of history come alive amid blooming azaleas and majestic magnolias. Discover the opulent millionaire's village on Jekyll Island, a playground for America's elite, and feel the vibrant spirit of St. Simon's Island. Then celebrate St. Patrick's Day in style with reserved seats at Savannah's world-famous parade, surrounded by the charm of the South's largest historic district. This 4-day motor coach journey is a feast for the senses, packed with history, celebration, and unforgettable memories. Join us for a trip that's more than just travel. It's an experience you'll treasure forever. Book your adventure today at happeningout.travel.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church, speaking of largest, here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
We finish tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ+, 1 Minute News.
1 Minute News, let's queer up entertainment. Jonathan Bailey reveals how he chose his prosthetic member on Fellow Travelers. On Late Night with Seth Meyers, Fellow Travelers star Jonathan Bailey candidly discussed choosing a prosthetic penis for the show's intimate scenes. When Mayer humorously inquired, and did you have a hand in decision making? Bailey quipped, just one hand. Bailey emphasized the importance of these scenes in portraying the character's emotional and physical journey. He noted you want to choose something that maybe reflects what actually is going on. The playful banter continued, with Bailey sharing that his wardrobe assistant added googly eyes to his undergarments on the last day of filming to lighten the mood on the set. Well, I hope he chose correctly. I haven't seen the show, so I can't speak to it.
I was going to say, Showtime's the only streaming app I don't have, so I guess there goes another $4.99 a month.
Well, very well made. Highly recommend that people see it. In some ways, it's historical in a way that anybody younger than me may be very surprised by the atmosphere that and the way that they had to live. And it ends in the 1980s, so you can imagine what that might mean about how one of them.
You mentioned it was hard to watch when we were talking about it before.
Yeah.
I just did not know that whenever you see a gentleman not wearing clothes on TV, they're using like a fake. I'm like, I didn't know that. This is new to me.
I didn't understand about the prosthetic part. I was like, does he not have one?
To avoid murky water. It's got to be supplemented.
I didn't know.
It's okay if he was, whether or not he does not have one, though, of course.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It's okay either way.
Yes.
That's why we are having so many initials and letters in our description here, because everything is, it's all good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. I'll tell you what, let's queer up students and youth culture. What do you say? From the past to the future, Florida's new college. Well, I wish this wasn't in our future. Once one of America's best, and now the new College of Florida has sparked controversy after this week discarding hundreds of books, many of which focused on LGBTQ plus issues, race, and women's rights. Somebody likes Mr. DeSantis over there. Photos shared by a Sarasota Herald Tribune reporter revealed titles like Cures, A Gay Man's Odyssey, and Feminist Thought among the books tossed into dumpsters. The college defended the move as part of a long-standing annual procedure, but the disposal coincides with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' efforts to shift the college's progressive culture. The college also confirmed it had discarded books linked to its now defunct gender studies program. Florida has seen a surge in book bans, particularly targeting works on race and LGBTQ plus themes, as new laws limit the teaching of sexual orientation, gender identity, and critical race theory in public schools. A PEN America study found that Florida led the nation in book bans during the 2022-23 school year. Didn't we invent it a couple of years ago? In 2020, New College was ranked by U.S. News at one of the top 10 public colleges in America. In 2024, New College did not even make the annual top 100 list. Thank you, Ron. That's all I have to say about that.
Listen, this is so that they tried to cover it up in that way. There are plenty of things that I have donated to small libraries that I don't read anymore because it's like, listen, I've got 200 books, so
Yes.
it's out of sight, out of mind. You know, you give it away.
Yeah, you don't put
This
it
is
in the
not
garbage.
that. Don't play me. This is not that. This is an
agree.
extension of the hate that Governor DeSantis has put out
Yep.
there with his ban towards LGBTQ plus authors all over. So don't disguise this.
It was odd that you'd think they'd even like just try and like sell them to like local bookshops or something, but like
No.
it all just unfortunately just reminds me like, you know, I want to like love colleges and institutions, but I always have to remind people, institutions, you know, you fall in love with them, but 2 or 3 bad apples get in control of it. Institution goes out the
I'm
window.
such a bookworm. Those pictures of dumpsters full of books made me want to throw up.
I know, it was so weird.
Yeah, still support your local bookshops if you've got one in your city. Support a Barnes & Noble. They have a section in Barnes & Noble that is specific for books that are banned in specific schools.
Yeah.
So go in person if you could go as opposed to get it on your Kindle. You'll help even more.
And we still have lots and lots of awesome books at Stonewall Museum, Archives, and Library, and nobody's messing with that.
Yes. Amen. Amen. LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up sports. MMA fighter Craig Jones forcibly kissed rival Gabby Garcia, sparking major controversy.
Man, I mean, really. A bitch, man. Craig, really? Man, I mean, fuck you, man. You crossed the line. You crossed the line. Cross the line. Cross the line. Sai daqui, porra! Para de me...
Australian MMA fighter Craig Jones sparked controversy after forcibly kissing his female rival, Gabby Garcia, during a pre-fight face-off this week. Both Brazilian MMA specialists met to size each other up ahead of their match, but Jones pulled down Garcia's head and forced a kiss on her lips. Garcia, shocked, immediately responded saying, "Fuck you, you crossed the line." Initially, Jones claimed the fight was canceled, stating on Instagram, "I guess Brazilians can't take a joke." However, Garcia later shared a post saying the fight is back on. This incident led to another case of investigating amongst trans athletes, including an increase in Google searches like, "Is Gabby Garcia trans?" despite the MMA star not being transgender. The recent victim of this harmful trend was Algerian Olympic boxer Amani Khalif. This is happening within 7 days of one another. These, for lack of better term, completely horrible, disrespectful trends is what we just used for in here. I used this comparison earlier around the table, but Gabby Garcia is just a bigger, taller human. Now, were her eyes blopping out of her head because of whatever pre-workout she was on in that size up? Yes. Did she look crazy because of her spray tan? Yes. Is she a trans woman? No. So enough is enough, and just leave these people alone. Why are we creating these narratives? Because we're sitting home and we're bored and we feel like strong humans behind a television, computer screen, phone screen. You're not that big in real life. You know, it's wild. It's wild.
Well, I just want to say, too, what I said earlier. I was shocked that an MMA fighter, male and female, were going to both be in the same ring. Now, obviously looking at her, but it makes me wonder, because people are really shady and businesses, did they do that on purpose? Because when you, first of all, to shock male and female, number one, then to actually see her and to see her size and to see him, he's very fortunate that he's still walking and breathing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but because that was an attack, that was not cool. You know, even though we know we taunt, but you don't do something like that.
Well, she's happily married. She's got children. You know, it's just disrespectful to
Totally.
her entire family. I don't know enough about MMA in the sense of if it's like a pay-per-view event, can they pay to have two people fight of opposite gender? I don't know enough about that, but I would think that if this was the first time it was happening, it would be noted in the article. So I have to believe it's probably not.
And, you know, like, I think there is a good point of, you know, is this a fair fight? You know, that cis-het woman is clearly way too big and strong to go out to fight that little guy. It's completely unfair. She has such a big advantage, you know, and, you know, poor guy, because, you know, this has been such a problem that men have been dealing with for centuries. Oh, so.
Yeah. Thank God we're taking the, you know, the privileged white man side, you know, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Get out of here.
Guess what? You're next.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Oh, good. Could you all see me in a fight? Goodness, I'd be down and instantly.
I let
Goodness.
Gabby do whatever she wanted.
LGBTQ 1-minute news. Let's queer up drag culture. Sasha Velour's Drag Spectacular shines at La Jolla. Velour, a drag spectacular by Sasha Velour, is now captivating audiences at the La Jolla Playhouse in California, marking a milestone as the first ever drag queen-led production at the venue. This high art queer fantasia brings Velour's vision to life and highlights drag's artistry's rightful place on Broadway. It highlights drag's artistry's, and, you know, the show also celebrates drag's rich history and its growing acceptance in mainstream theater. Further information and tickets for the show are available at lajollaplayhouse.org. This is way more my zone than MMA fighting. I think this sounds like such a great show. You know, I think people, if you're able to go, it looks like a really great time.
To be alive at a time where drag queens are on Broadway and it's not just, you know, price of an actual Broadway production like a Priscilla Queen of the Desert or something, but it's another outlet that you can go to and just be gay and celebrate art. Take all my money. Take all my money.
And La Jolla Playhouse, I mean, yes, I have to represent California.
Yes.
Born and raised.
Yes.
So, you know, very prestigious, very prominent playhouse. So I take
Don't
kudos.
many productions start or sit down there and then they'll go to Broadway after?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's one of those theaters that's kind of that halfway point.
Fantastic.
Well, that is today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Join the conversation on your favorite streaming platforms.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. And that's the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Eric Restivo, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Yvonne Rohrbacher, Michael Greene, and Alex Morash, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. to our LGBTQ plus world. We wish you good night.
Night.
Good night.